Hey, what's going on, everyone? Jaquan here, and we got set champs for Fabled right around the corner. But today we are going to be bringing in some spice, which is the Emerald Steel Temple deck that won the Content Creator Set Champs. So we're going to be testing around with this deck today, and we are going to be playing against a Baja Blast variant with a special tech of New Orleans. So we'll see how that pans out for today. But I'm super excited to try out, different types of color pairings this meta, just because, Emerald Steel was so prevalent when Diablo was a thing, and now since Diablo got rotated out, there's going to be different ways to try to, make this deck work, and I want to have a look to see how this deck actually won the Content Creator Set Champs. Because it's not a color pairing that you actually see topping in any of the big tournaments right now. So here's the list. And as you can see here, we are going to go right into, trying to find a way to aggro out the opponent early in the game. And then afterwards, we're going to be able to spin off a couple of our actions in terms of the Strength of a Raging Fire, Mother Knows Best, and Heffalumps and Woozles, all thanks to the new card Max Goof, which will allow us to pay an additional ink to be able to get a card back from our discard of an action that's 3 or less. And then we also have the Max Goof Shift as well. Clarabelle, which is also insanely broken. So let's see how this deck goes. All right, so we do start off first, and we are going to ink a Clarabelle to play a Clarabelle, passing turn. In this deck, we are going to try and shift Clarabelle early, especially if we are going first. And the reason for that is because if, let's just say, we are going first, the opponent's going to have one more card than we would, since they get to draw on their turn. And this is going to allow us to gain a lot of advantage and slowly start to push out a lot of our smaller characters. Calhoun, Captain Hooks, right? You got the Clarabelle 1-drops, you got the Ursula, and then especially one very spicy card in the deck that everyone should be very scared of. It's Go-Go Tamago. It allows you to pay an additional 2 ink to gain lore equal to the damage that's on an opposing character. So a very strong game ender. And Go-Go has seen a whole ton of play in the past with Amethyst Emerald, and even in the new Amber Emerald Dog deck that's being played right now too. So we're going to play Pete. Pete's going to allow us to lock out the opponent. That way they can't hopefully do any additional ramping in terms of Azurite Sea, but it's also going to stop them from playing cards like You're Welcome, Mother Knows Best, things like that, to be able to slow us down for us to not be able to play the Clarabelle shift. So our opponent plays the Donald Duck, and this is a very interesting card, very similar to Beast Tragic Hero, except it allows your opponent to choose as well whether they want to draw a card with you. And it is optional, keep in mind. So you don't necessarily have to draw a card, especially if you know that a Clarabelle shift is coming on the following turn. Okay, so we're going to play another Pete, locking out the opponent again, so no actions on their turn. And it looks like we're going to ink the Strength of a Raging Fire. I don't personally believe that the opponent is going to use their Donald Duck to challenge or quest, because it's most likely going to mean that they just want to keep it readied until they have enough cards to play out their Clarabelle and maybe sing You're Welcome with it. But all we do need is about one more character before Strength of a Raging Fire can take out the Donald Duck in one go, and hopefully by then we would have drawn a decent amount of cards with Donald Duck. Okay, so our opponent plays another Donald Duck, and this is going to either be really good or really bad for us. But because we are more lower to the ground, we do have the option of drawing more cards and spitting out those characters that we draw as well, much quicker than this Baja Blast deck. The only other thing that we do have to remember is that playing against a Baja Blast, they are going to have Under the Sea and I believe the heads action that allows the I guess, them to lower the strength of all the characters on our board before they Under the Sea as well. So we do have to be careful of that. But the Emerald Steel deck is technically playing like an anti-meta, no actions type of variant because we do have Peats, we do have Ursula Deceivers, which we rarely see these days anymore. But Ursula Deceivers are going to be very useful in ripping out those Under the Seas because Under the Sea is uninkable. Unless they do get rid of it with Tipo early in the game, but against this matchup, I doubt that would probably happen unless they really need to do it. So our Pete's going to sing a Strength of a Raging Fire. We do have the option to take out the Donald Duck. But I'm thinking long and hard here, and I actually end up just taking out the Tipo. Now you guys are probably thinking, oh, I'm pretty crazy for that. But I realized that Baja Blast also plays Baymax. And Tipo is a perfect target for Baymax to get shifted on there. And that way they can take out one of my characters in one shot. However, by leaving the 2 Donald Ducks available, I will also benefit from the draw as well. And if he wants to shift in a Baymax onto a Donald Duck, I'm 100% okay with that, right? Because Donald Duck is a 4-drop itself. So the opponent plays a Sail the Azurite Sea, allowing them to draw a card, and then they're going to be able to ink an additional card this turn. And at this point, it looks like they might just end up hard casting a Clarabelle 7-drop if they do have one. But keep in mind that the Baja Blast deck will also play cards like Basil, which is a 7-drop, allowing them to bounce a character back to our hand. So it looks like it was correct. He did have the Baymax shift, which he ends up shifting onto a Donald Duck and then singing Down in New Orleans. So this is a different variation of Baja Blast by playing Down in New Orleans. And what that does is that you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck and play any character, item, or location that's 6 or less for free, and putting the rest on the bottom of the deck. Now, having Baymax out with a Down in New Orleans allowed him to spam out the board with very strong characters, because these Baymaxes are going to be able to trade, for the most part, 2 characters at the very least for one of their characters, right? So he is going to be able to slowly get back board advantage if we do just keep our characters exerted. But we do have the option of being a little quicker than the Baja Blast deck by being able to go much, much wider, much quicker. Okay, so we're playing an Ursula. That way we can just double check to see if there is any Under the Sea, because if the opponent did have Under the Sea, you know, we would rip that for free and then we would be safe to quest outs or even challenge into his Baymax. But because he doesn't have Under the Sea, we know that he has Clarabelle. We can now start to put out more of our characters on the board for Clarabelle to be less effective. And just hand knowledge is very, very useful, right? Because what if he has like You're Welcome or other cards that might be able to deal with our board? We're going to be able to play around that, right? And especially in a toolboxy deck like Emerald Steel, we're able to then maybe save a couple of cards that would be useful for his cards in his hand, right? So that way we're not overextending. But looks like we have the Strength of a Raging Fire and Mother Knows Best to take out both of those Baymaxes, strengthening one of the Baymax and then bouncing the other Baymax back to the opponent's hand, allowing us to quest freely while only leaving the Donald Duck on the opponent's side of the board. And then we are going to be able to draw with that as well. And if the opponent does choose to hard cast the Clarabelle 7-drop, we will still have a lot of characters up on the board that will allow us to quest very fast and hopefully for game as well. Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lore right now on the board, taking us to 15 on the following turn. And then we could also potentially shift in a Clarabelle. We could also play out 2-3 more characters. And as long as the opponent doesn't have Under the Sea, we would solidify the win here. Okay, so the opponent challenges into our Clarabelle 1-drop, taking it out. Now this is also very interesting because we could technically throw a Pete into the Donald Duck, leaving 4 damage on the Donald Duck, and then playing Go-Go Tamago to get 4 lore from the damaged Donald Duck as well. So that's why against any sort of Emerald decks that play Go-Go Tamago, you have to be very wary of having a high willpower character on board, especially if it's exerted, because the opponent can challenge into that character and then play Go-Go. Or we could also play, Strength of a Raging Fire, fire the cannons, damage that character, play Go-Go, right? And in this variant as well, I do notice that a very interesting combo that you can pull off in this Emerald Steel deck is to start bouncing your Go-Go's back, or even bouncing your Docks back from Mother Knows Best. And we can abuse this by playing out the Max Goof and Max Goof Shift. And keep in mind that this deck also plays Emerald Chromacon. So Emerald Chromacon is going to allow us to bounce any character from our side or the opponent's side once one of our characters get banished, allowing us to bounce back potentially a Dock or even a Go-Go Tamago as well. Alright, so the opponent plays out 2 Clarabelles, one 1-drop and the 3-drop Clarabelle. We do have more cards in our hand than the opponent, so the Clarabelle 3-drop is going to trigger, allowing the opponent to draw 1 card. And as of right now, looks like only 3 of our characters are prevalent to getting removed from Under the Sea, while both of our Petes and our Calhouns will be safe from Under the Sea. Okay, so we play Fire the Cannons, taking out a Clarabelle, and then playing out a Calhoun, inking a Captain Hook, and we're probably just going to turn everything sideways at this point. Play a Mother Knows Best, bouncing the Clarabelle 3-drop back to the opponent's hand, because we do know that the opponent does still have a Clarabelle Shift, and that Clarabelle Shift will be able to take out any of our characters in one shot. This also allows us to slow down the opponent, giving us the edge of being able to have lethal on the next turn. So as you can see here, the Donald Duck just being on the board this whole time was kind of a double-edged sword, because this Donald Duck probably drew us at least 4 cards, and the opponent also had a second Donald Duck as well. So I really like the card personally, especially if you are planning on dropping a Clarabelle onto the board the following turn. But just as a standalone card itself, it's definitely very dangerous to have, because it could, especially for lower the ground decks like ours, give the opponent just way too much advantage and too much gas to be able to go wide, right, as you can see here. The opponent plays You're Welcome, shuffling back 1 card from our board back to the deck, and then we're going to draw 2 cards. I don't believe this is going to be enough though, because okay, so he does have John Silver, giving one of our characters Reckless. So this means that we're going to be at exactly 15 if we quest out with everything, because one of our characters is going to have Reckless with John Silver. And then the opponent plays the Clarabelle 3-drop and drawing a card from that, and looks like he passes turn. Okay, so it looks like the Pete is the one with the Reckless, so we do have 1 Pete that is available to challenge into one of their characters. Or even singing as well. That would allow us to keep the Pete alive without any damage. Okay, so we're going to play Clarabelle 3-drop, drawing us a card as well. Playing another Calhoun, and then a Dock, discarding 2 cards to draw 2 additional cards, probably searching for a Go-Go Tamago. So Pete's going to sing Heffalumps and Woozles, drawing us a card and targeting one opposing character, and that way that character cannot quest. So that John Silver cannot quest. John Silver will need to quest to be able to use its ability to give another character Reckless, so that will save us from one of our characters needing to be challenging into one of their characters. But we are going to quest anyways all the way up to 19. The opponent is really going to need Under the Sea and also the Heads action as well to be able to win this here. But even then, again, any of our characters that we play out will present lethal, and also there's also a risk of us top decking a Go-Go Tamago for the win as well. So there you have it, game 1. We do take it with that, and that means in game 2 the opponent will most likely go first. So our game plan is going to change slightly, but I would say being a blue deck, blue and green deck I should say, we are going to want to hopefully get cards that are going to go under them before they can sing Under the Sea, and then stopping the Under the Sea from happening with either Pete or Ursula. That Down in New Orleans is super spicy. I love that card. Okay, so it looks like the opponent passes, inks and pass. And we're gonna ink a Max Goof Shift and also pass. Okay, so it looks like both of us did not have any 1-drops. So he inks a Tipo to play a Tipo, inks a card face down, passes turn over to us. So we ink a Lewis, play a Calhoun, and pass turn. Now in some Baja variants, they do play Pleakley as well, so we do also have to be wary of that. But it looks like the opponent does just choose to shift in the Baymax and then sing it Down in New Orleans. And the Down in New Orleans was able to get a Robin Hood, and the Robin Hood is going to allow him to draw a card because he has less cards in his hand than we do. So now he has 2 6-drop characters just staring us down here. And that Calhoun is definitely not going to be enough to be able to take anything out right now, and it wouldn't be wise for us to quest with the Calhoun either. So we ink the Ursula Deceiver. Don't really need it right now. Yeah, I guess the only downside as well in this matchup is the Ursula Deceiver could also potentially rip out a Down in New Orleans, because Down in New Orleans is going to be uninkable as well. So very good card in this particular variant. So we're going to fire off double, fire the cannons, taking out the Robin Hood and passing turn. Opponent drops a Donald Duck, which may or may not be beneficial to us right now, just because of that Baymax shift. Because it's also a 6 cost, keep in mind it is going to be quite high to be able to combine with other weaker characters to sing Under the Sea as well. So we're going to play a Clarabelle 3-drop, drawing a card because we do have less cards than the opponent. And we're going to ink the Max Goof 3-drop here. We don't need it right now because Max Goof only has its ability to get back a 3 cost or less song, meaning that Fire the Cannons will not be a proper target for Max Goof here. So looks like the opponent plays a Vision of the Future, looking at the top 5 cards and adding a card from that to their hand. I'm going to play a Clarabelle 1-drop. And singing a You're Welcome. Okay. Or no, Under the Sea, sorry. They're singing Under the Sea. And that means our Clarabelle will also go to the bottom of the deck. Slowing us down from playing any Clarabelle shifts later in the game as well, which would be very, very useful for us. So we ink a max Goof again, but this is the shift target. Definitely don't need that because we don't have any actions or songs in our discard, and then we don't have a shift target on board right now. So in this case here, what we want to focus is trying to go wide and slowing the opponent down with Pete's. Docks, drawing us more cards, throwing down 3-drop Clarabelles, and then slowing the opponent down with Mother Knows Best and Strength of a Raging Fire. So Calhoun's going to sing Heffalumps and Woozles, allowing us to get a card from that. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm looking for outs right now. Okay, so I'm going to play a Lewis. Lewis could potentially exert itself when it's played to give another opposing character Reckless. But we are not going to do this because the Baymax is going to be able to take it on one shot. So we pass turn and we're going to draw a card from the Donald Duck. Okay, opponent's going to shift into Clarabelle. And he's going to hard cast Sail the Azurite Sea, drawing him a card. He's going to ink a John Silver. Yeah, so Baymax is going to challenge into Calhoun, and he's just going to quest out for 4. Taking him into 6. And he's going to pass turn from there. Yeah, so the only problem that I'm finding with this Emerald Steel deck is it does look like it could potentially run out of gas quickly, especially if you don't get the combo pieces that is needed for it to start going. And especially against decks like, you know, Sapphire decks like Blurpo or Baja Blast, I can definitely see where the struggle would be, especially if they're able to establish a board full of very strong characters. Because then a lot of their characters are going to be able to trade into any 2 of our characters as well, right? Making a lot of our characters quite useless, especially because we're not a super aggro deck, we are a tempo deck. We aren't playing too many characters that are going to have 2 lore to be able to quest with, right? So a lot of our characters are going to have 1 lore, but it is going to have a lot of different types of utility effects with our characters in this deck, right? So Doc's going to draw his cards, Lewis is going to be able to give cards Reckless, Clarabelles, you know, are going to be able to either utilize item removal or even drawing us more cards. Gogo Tamago is really there to catch up on that lore from the lack of 2 questers that we have, right? Okay, so it looks like the opponent is just absolutely going off. He does have the heads held high, which is going to be the perfect combo with Under the Sea, allowing him to be able to take out our whole entire board and putting it under the deck here. And then the opponent is going to play a Bobby, allowing him to draw a card and discard a card. And he's going to pass turn from there. So we're going to play an Ursula, taking out a You're Welcome. But honestly, I think at this point it is going to be very, very hard for us to come back. So we're going to play Max Goof, paying an additional ink, giving us back a strength of a Raging Fire. And we're going to pass turn from there. Yeah, I feel like with the Emerald Steel deck, there has to be a better way to be able to put cards that are going to just go a little quicker than the cards in this deck here, because against slower decks but much stronger you know, characters that they'll have in the later games, such as, you know, Blurple and Baja Blast, I just don't see how this deck could come back. Like, the comeback potential for this is very low, aside from the Go-Go Tamagos. But again, you have to be in lethal range for the Go-Go Tamagos to really benefit you, right? But in this case here, let's just say we're only at 3 lore, Go-Go Tamagos aren't going to do anything. So opponent plays a Robin Hood, giving him an additional card. He's going to sing Down in New Orleans again. Plays a Clarabelle 3-drop. And then drawing a card from Clarabelle 3-drop because the opponent still has less cards in their hand than we do. Down in New Orleans in this build is very cool because if you get Clarabelle or Robin Hood, it acts as a card draw and giving you an additional character to spam the board with. And the more characters on the board, the easier it will be to sing Under the Sea. It doesn't look like this Baja Blast deck with a Down in New Orleans plays Basil. So it does look like Clarabelle is probably their strongest character right now. And that means any other character below Clarabelle is going to be used as a target for Down in New Orleans. Yeah, one of the changes that I did make to this variation compared to the content creator champion who won with the Emerald Steel deck is that I did put in Nalas. You know, and the reason for that is because what I explained earlier, right? There has to be a faster way to try to gain lore to be able to give yourself more of a comeback potential when it comes to playing against slower decks like this. That does manage to stabilize, right? Because Nala quests for 3 if it doesn't have any damage. And it's going to be a lot easier for Nala to stick on the board compared to other cards like Merfolk. Merfolk also defeats the purpose of having Clarabelles in the deck too, because you're removing a card from the opponent's hand if they take out the Merfolk. So right now I'm testing with 2 Nalas in this variation. And so far it's not too bad. Like, as a toolbox deck, I do want to have the options, right? Of either playing Calhoun if we're going second, and then playing Nalas if we're going first. So just having, you know, different types of play lines is something that I always like to look for, especially in decks like this, because again, like, you don't want to have too much of a linear deck, right? Because the more linear the deck, right, the simpler the play lines, the less play lines that they have, the easier it is for the opponents to figure it out, right? Especially if, let's say, you're going into a big tournament and maybe it's open deck lists, right? They're then able to see your deck and be able to figure out, okay, what's going to be the general play lines that they can actually have against me. So we do decide to scoop it up here because, again, there's nothing that we can do to be able to combat any of these characters because they're just way too big for our stuff. Again, like this deck can be definitely really broken if you do manage to get a wide board and then start looping the strength in Mother Knows Best. But all right, so game 3, we ink a Captain Hook and we pass. Now there's only 2 reasons why we would do that. Either Captain Hook's the only ink that we have, or we don't really care too much on having a 1-drop like Captain Hook because we're playing against a slower deck. But nonetheless, we do play out a Calhoun on turn 2, and we pass turn. They're going to ink a Clarabelle, playing Sail the Azurite Sea, allowing them to get a card and inking an additional time. So they're going to ink a Mother Gothel. So we're going to play our own Clarabelle here, allowing us to get a card. And we decide not to quest with Calhoun, even if the Clarabelle isn't strong enough to take out the Calhoun on its own, and we don't have to be worried about a Clarabelle shift coming in. We do have to be worried about a Baymax shift. And as you guys can see there, I just showed you my hand at the time, which contains 3 docks and 1 Mother Knows Best. So there you have it. That's the reason why we inked the Captain Hook on turn 1, is because we open with a huge amount of docks and Mother Knows Best for a really bricky hand there. But let's just see if we can actually come out of this, because again, we are playing a lower to the ground deck. And having multiple docks isn't the end of the world, right? So we'll see how this plays out. Remember, there are going to be a lot of games that you play in the future that are just not going to be able to provide you a really good hand, right? And again, like all decks are going to be able to brick, right? Blurple could potentially not have any turn 2 ramp, right? There are going to be ways that you can go for as a player, and you know, you can also practice this as well in worst case scenarios and trying to get out of this, right? Again, like the deck, having a deck function the way that it's supposed to, 80% of the time it's going to happen, right? But as a player, it's up to you as well to be able to play out the rest of the 20% when the deck does happen to brick, to be able to win those games, right? It's the same way where your game plan changes if you're going second compared to going first. And going second, as you may know, provides such a huge disadvantage against, you know, a lot of games. So being able to play around those types of things is what's going to differentiate you as a better player. So the opponent is going to play your welcome, sending back one of our characters, and we're going to draw 2 cards from that, but the opponent does have a Clarabelle shift, so they're also going to draw a whole ton of cards. And as you can see there, last turn we just played out the 2 docks without any effects, which is kind of a feel bad moment, but there's still a chance. There's still a chance. Okay, so we're going to sing Mother Knows Best, bouncing the Clarabelle back to their hand, slowing the opponent down. Play 1 for Fire the Cannons, and then the dock challenges the Clarabelle, taking it out. We're going to ink, and we're going to play max Goof, paying the additional ink, and getting back the Mother Knows Best. And then we're going to be questing with Doc for 1. So we were able to deal with the opponent's board, and because we also dealt with the smaller Clarabelle, they are not going to be able to shift in the bigger Clarabelle. So that means they're going to have to hard quest the Clarabelle on the following turn. So the opponent plays Sail the Azurite Sea. And then he's going to play a Bobby, drawing him a card, and then discarding a card. So we're slowly building up our board to be pretty wide, but it is pretty prevalent to get under the seed right now, or on the following turn when they have 8 ink. An ink John Silver, playing out 2 Clarabelles, almost guaranteeing him that he can shift in a Clarabelle next turn potentially. Shift in our own Clarabelle. We're going to sing the Mother Knows Best. And we're going to sing another Mother Knows Best, bouncing both Clarabelles back to the opponent's hand, questing for 2, and then we're going to draw a couple of cards here from our own Clarabelle shift. So just like that, we were able to swing the tempo back to our favor, even with bricking with a Mother Knows Best and 3 docks, which is insane. So we'll see if the opponent is going to be able to come back from this, because we did draw out a bunch of cards from our Clarabelle shift, but having that 1 dock in our hand is going to allow us to just throw a bunch of cards out and then maybe curve out for a dock as well. Ooh, okay, so the opponent is going to play Your Welcome, shuffling the Clarabelle back to our deck and drawing 2 cards, which I don't know if it's going to be that great right now for the opponent to come back from, just because we are going to have a whole ton of cards in our hand now. And the opponent plays out the 2 Clarabelles that we bounce back. And now our hand size is looking pretty healthy. We're inking a max Goof. Now, if a Clarabelle shift comes down, then he would have enough to sing Under the Sea. So we're going to play the Ursula Deceiver just to check to make sure he doesn't have it. And that way we know that we can go a little wider. Because now we're feeling pretty safe here. And I can see how Pete's are going to be very good in this case too, because it will allow us to just keep going wide. So we're going to play out a Nala and a Captain Hook. And again, Nala's going to be very good in this case here because it's going to give us that additional lore. One more lore than a Calhoun being able to challenge into one of characters. And then we're going to play Strength of a Raging Fire, taking out the Baymax. I think we have about 2 cards left in our hand here. Or 3 cards, looks like. Opponent plays another Clarabelle, shifts in a Clarabelle. It's a Clarabelle party here. Okay, he's going to challenge into Max Goof and the Dock, just to kind of slow down our game here. I'm going to pick up a card for turn. Play a Max Goof, adding back a Strength, inking a Clarabelle since we don't need it anymore, hard casting a Strength, taking out their Clarabelle shift, and Ursula's going to challenge into the other Clarabelle, taking it out, and then we're just going to start questing here, taking us to 10, and we don't really care that we have a Captain Hook exerted at this point, because if the opponent wants to waste a character challenge into a Captain Hook, then that's fine by us. So they're going to play Sail the Azurite Sea, drawing them a card. And he's going to play John Silver, giving our Nala Reckless. And he's going to pass turn to us. Another cool thing to note is that Nala could technically sing Heffalems and Woozles. And that way Nala can be safe from taking itself out from the Reckless. So we're going to play another Max Goof, taking back the Strength again. Max Goofy is pretty good, you know, once you get the engine going and you have Mother Knows Best or Strength in your discard to choose from. And our Max Goof that we played on the previous turn is going to sing the Strength, taking out the John Silver. And then our third dock that was stuck in our hand from the beginning of the game finally gets played to be able to give us 2 additional cards from our deck. And then we're going to quest out to 13. And the opponent's really going to need to take out every single card on our board right now to be able to win. However, 1 Under the Sea is going to be able to do it here. Now the question is, does he have Under the Sea? He also plays Vision of the Future, so Vision of the Future is going to be able to find Under the Sea, but the question is, will he have enough ink after that? Okay, Your Welcome is going to be played on Nala, since Nala is still going to be the only character on our board that's going to be able to quest for 3. But that is going to give us 2 extra cards here, meaning that if he does happen to wipe our board, we're going to have follow-up cards to be able to be played on the following turn. So it looks like the opponent was stuck with a lot of Clarabelles, because we just seen 1-drop Clarabelles, 3-drop Clarabelles, and Clarabelle shifts all being played during this game here. Okay, so as of right now, if we were to quest with everything, it's going to take us to 19 only. So we're going to quest for everything, taking us up to 19. Playing the Fire the Cannons to deal 2 damage to the Clarabelle, and then finishing off with a Go-Go Tamago. What a way to go. And there you have it. Emerald Steel won against Baja Blast. So if you like this, please give us a like and subscribe. Comment down below what you guys think. And Good luck on the set champs coming up for Fabled, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.